How could you do this to me?
Please, let me explain.
He believed this night would vanish into the shadows of secrecy. A lavish suite, a smiling woman at his side who was not his wife, and no one to uncover his betrayal. And yet, moments later, the woman he least expected walked through those doors not as a guest, but as the very person who now commanded the hotel, its chairwoman. How did she know of his rendezvous? What unfolded when their separate truths collided in that gilded hallway? Before we go further into the heart of this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Who exactly was this man who believed his secrets would never surface? On the outside, he appeared respectable, admired in business circles, a husband many thought had it all. Yet why risk everything, a marriage, a reputation, a carefully constructed life, for a single night in a 5-star suite with another woman? What promises drew him to deception, and what drove him to gamble on lies in a place where truth has a way of slipping through locked doors? And then there is the wife. How did she ascend to such power that she could walk into that hotel not as a bystander, but as its chairwoman, wielding authority that changed everything the moment she appeared? What began as a secret rendezvous would become a story of betrayal, control, and a twist few could have ever imagined. To the outside world, the man appeared accomplished, respected, and untouchable. In business, he was admired for his charm, his composure, and the image of a husband who had built a life many envied. He carried himself with the confidence of someone convinced his private choices would never find daylight. At his side at home was his wife, a woman of elegance and quiet strength, underestimated by nearly everyone who surrounded her. Few knew of her determination, her ambition, or the empire she was carefully building in silence while others overlooked her. And then, there was the mistress, younger and eager, delighted by the expensive gifts and the taste of a life she had not earned but was willing to accept without question. Behind the closed doors of their mansion, however, cracks were already forming. Subtle arguments at dinner, unspoken distance, and the weight of secrets pressing against their silence. The night of the hotel rendezvous began with precision. The husband, certain his plans would remain hidden, booked a luxury suite under his own name, but with explicit instructions to the staff to keep the reservation discreet. His every word carried a tone of entitlement, as though secrecy was not a request but an expectation. Walking through the dimly lit lobby, he held the arm of his mistress tightly, her laughter echoing lightly in the air, sharp against the silence of his paranoia. He checked his phone repeatedly, scanning messages, ensuring no loose thread would unravel this carefully woven lie. Yet, as he crossed toward the elevators, a faint voice called out his wife's name. He froze, the sound cutting through the polished calm of the hotel. It was impossible, he thought. She was not supposed to be there. But suspicion had already entered the room with him long before he opened the door. What followed inside that hotel spread quickly beyond the walls of the suite. The staff, sworn to discretion, whispered in quiet corners, stunned at the sight of the wife walking through the lobby with authority that none of them had expected. In hushed tones, they repeated it to one another. She was not merely a guest, she was the chairwoman. By the next morning, rumors had already reached the board members, men and women now watching closely, measuring every word, every move, knowing this scandal was not a private matter anymore. The media was merciless, splashing headlines across tabloids and television screens. Scandal in the suite. Questions spread faster than answers. Did she plan this? Had she known all along about the affair? And whispers lingered still. Was the mistress working with her? A pawn in a scheme carefully crafted? What had begun as secrecy had now become an open investigation. The truth, when it finally surfaced, was far more calculated than anyone could have imagined. The wife had not stumbled into that hotel by chance, nor had fate delivered her to that lobby at the precise moment her husband arrived with another woman. She had orchestrated every detail. Quietly, without announcement or spectacle, she had acquired controlling shares in the very hotel chain he believed was his sanctuary for secrecy. For months, she had studied his behavior, watched his excuses unravel, and waited patiently for the moment when he would ensnare himself in the web of his own deceit. When she walked into that suite, it was not as a wounded spouse begging for answers, but as the chairwoman of the house he had defiled with lies. And there he sat, paralyzed, his mistress silent, as the weight of her authority filled the room more heavily than any accusation ever could. Inside that suite, the silence was heavier than any argument could have been. The wife did not scream, she did not cry, and she did not lift her voice in fury. Instead, she walked to the table, sat across from her husband, and without hesitation, slid a folder toward him. Inside were divorce papers, prepared and final. He looked down, his hands trembling, the mistress frozen in disbelief. She didn't just catch him. She ended him, not with rage, but with silence, with power, and with the law. What he thought would be a night of indulgence became the night his carefully built world collapsed. And yet, this wasn't only a scandal. It was a story of betrayal, of justice, and of the quiet strength found in those who are underestimated. But here's the real mystery. Was this revenge, or was it liberation? And so, in that single night, the husband lost far more than a secret. He lost the trust of the woman who had once stood beside him, the respect of the circles that once admired him, and the very foundation of the life he believed he controlled. The wife left that suite not in anger but in authority, leaving behind the image of a woman underestimated for far too long. But now the question turns to you. If you were in her position, would you have walked away quietly, with dignity intact? Or would you have chosen to dismantle everything he had built, brick by brick? Don't forget to subscribe for more beautiful stories of where truth is often stranger than fiction.